Hey everyone, we're back and we are talking again with Michael McGinnis, obviously about his book and really getting insight into why he wanted to share his story and also how he turned his personal journey into a career that has been fruitful, writing a book, being a speaker, a coach, and definitely you'll get more insight with this conversation. So I want to welcome again Michael McGinnis to the conversation.
Hi, Marissa. Hey,
Hi, Michael.
glad to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really did enjoy reading your book, and I'm really excited to deep dive into, the reasoning behind you wanting to write this book, and also, how it can help others. And we'll get into that. But I first want to ask you and open up the conversation of, what inspired you to write this book.
Great question. And it was no original intention to write a book. I came back, from really changing so much of my life. And with that experience, I would tell others briefly about it to the point of which people would invite me in to share more of my story. And in these events, continually I got the suggestion and request is, why don't you write this? And I said, well, I'm not an author. In fact, I got a C writing papers in high school. So, I said, I don't mean, but then over time, hearing that, I realized there was an opportunity to really connect with people out there. And that's what I was finding in my talks. And to be able to provide a source of inspiration and a guide or framework to help people who are really at that point in their journey where they're looking to sort of either answer deep, profound questions, overcome the past, or in any case, really begin to sort of reinvent their life. I had changed and I really wanted to be so much more authentic. And I didn't really know what that meant until I started to be myself. In that time, writing the book was actually really good for me, is because it allowed me to really just put it out there to the point of which now, hey, my life is literally an open book. I could really be more of me. And that's really why the publisher chose to pick this up. You had alluded to the fact that it really is coming from a person's perspective, a person who's gone through it and willing to sort of share it all. And that was why the publisher, in fact, their words were, the vantage point that the reader has from the person in the hot seat. They said, me, who's going through it and talking openly and candidly about it, is what has become the biggest source of inspiration to others. And I also found that in my work roles, as I was becoming a more and more effective leader, a common part of being that leader was becoming more authentic. The more authentic I was, particularly with my teams and my internal clients, the greater trust levels I had. And that's another key reason for it is that when you are more authentic, people are quicker to trust you because they know that there's no hidden agenda.
Your ability to really articulate feelings that you had and feelings of nervousness, feelings of, you're scared to like go to the workshop, which we'll get into, in parts of your book. But I feel like that is really being authentic.
First part, it was tough. It really was tough to be able to resurrect those, the Pandora's box, right? That I had opened up through my course of counseling to understand what happened, and to write about it was tough. But yet, I would say others said this, and it was very true. It's very healing. One of the things I like to do in workshops is really to help people, guide them to really create their own story, because we each have our own story in life. And when you're able to really put it down in a way to understand it, you really begin to sort of see what influenced us and who we are and who we've become today. And that's a lot of the purpose of it, is that, you know, the purpose of writing it was to role model the need to really back up, look in the rearview mirror and say what happened. Because if you look at you psychologically, unfortunately, as an educator and in human resources for so much of my career, I learned a lot about psychology because it's the study of human behavior. And one of the things you come to learn is the majority of who we are today is actually a result of those early formative years. You know, that ages between 5 and 7, where a lot of our beliefs about life, about people, who we are, has really been developed based on the comments that key people made, our parents and other people made about us. And they drive so much of our life early on. And so divulging that, coming out with that was really important. So it was important for me to do it, not only to really role model that step of telling our story, but it also had the side benefit of really helping me to heal that part of my past. It's out now, it's open. You know, this is what happened, this is what it did. And the essence of all of these activities throughout the whole personal growth, self-discovery process is self-awareness. You've got to become aware of self, and aware of self means the good as well as the bad and the ugly on that. So yes, it was difficult.
um, in that part of the book, where I was like there with you, like in that, you know, first workshop you went to, which we'll talk about, where everyone didn't want to say anything, right? Everyone, they're like, yeah, okay, why are we here? What are we doing? And it's very nerve wracking to like then say, okay, I need help. I'm here for help.
Oh,
And go ahead.
no, I'm just enjoying so much. You're putting into words, really the essence of the journey and the start of the journey, right? Because so much of it up front is learning to really overcome some of the things that hold us back. And there are those who are willing to and develop the courage, the ability to be able to do it. We often need coaching and assistance to really to do that, how to do that, because we're not conditioned to be that way. And there's a lot who don't, right? That hide behind that's our safety zone. And heck, we grew up socially conditioned, and I know in the era I grew up and others is, the sports player, the forever John Wayne image for those with the traditional cowboy, right? That just had that facade. It was about being tough and expressing emotions. Things were a sign of weakness. And you're right. I think that what my own experience has been is really in the 70s and 80s, as the generation came in, at the hippie movement, right, the free love, there was starting to be an expression of self more than back before then. And I remember seeing pictures, you go back and see pictures, everything black and white images, right? And in that, then along with that were the new leaders coming up, the Oprah Winfrey, who really started to talk about this stuff, right? And as that started to happen, it started to open it up. So yes, it's being a little bit more role modeled, but it's still a tough road to get there and very difficult because people are very fearful of what others will think of them. And that's that self-esteem factor that you've really got to be able to develop up front, because as long as you're fearful and scared about what others are thinking and letting that behavior drive you, it's going to be very difficult to learn to be yourself.
You brought about Oprah and bringing up all of these, things that she used to talk about and stuff. And, I grew up watching her. Like, I watched her shows, but I didn't get what she was saying until like this year or last year. Like, and she's been practicing and promoting self-awareness and like, all of the people that inspire her for years. But like, I didn't get that until like I'm ready to see it. So it's nice that, and I think you see something when you're ready to see it. I don't necessarily believe that you can force someone into looking into themselves or looking within and realizing that they need to be aware of themselves. And I think that, these books or me meeting you and learning about you came about at the right time, because who knows where I would have been like 5 years ago. So yeah, I mean, it's really amazing to just kind of like notice that now, as I personally put more work into myself, and then I'm coming across people like you and the book like this. But I do want to talk about the book, some more detail, so that way we can give a little insight into how the book is. So one of the unique things about the book that I really enjoy was you talk about the story, your backstory, all the things that you went through with your father and your mother and your siblings, and early on, childhood and all the struggles through grade school and stuff like that. Um, but you talked also about you had like reflection questions at the end of each chapter that I think really challenge people um, if they're reading it, because they're not just reading your story, they're also trying to potentially find things in their story that might need to be brought to light. So, were you originally planning to put some reflection questions in each chapter, or like how did that come about? Like what possessed you to make that part of the book?
Great question. And by the way, a lot of great points that you yourself just made through the whole conversation, too. So that part really reflects the educator in me. We can learn things, but until we apply it, it doesn't mean anything. It's just like bits of neurons and things in our brain that are taking up space, right? But
Right.
it's not until we apply it that it really becomes learning. The rest of it is just gaining acquisition to knowledge. So it was really the educator in me, and the format of the chapters really became up front is the setting up. You notice that in the beginning of the chapters, I really had a preview of what was going to be covered in the chapter from a psychological perspective. You're going to read about the kinds of issues, these types of issues, abandonment, and the other kind of terms often utilized to sort of describe the challenges people go through. And then, of course, there's a story, and at the end of it is really that premise is, okay, now it's time to go to work. Hey, it's great to be inspired. We're all inspired by great movies, books. Is that what we want? And as you said, are ready for? Right? Because you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink, right? And so
Right,
they
right.
have to be ready to dip in there and be ready to take that inner reflection. And for those that is the purpose of that segment. It allows them with some pretty deep, profound questions to really begin that stage of growing self-awareness, that begin the stage of really taking that hard look within, answering some tough questions, learning to be open, honest with self first in a very safe setting, just with you, with the book, maybe a journal, something on the side. So the purpose of it is to really begin to apply what you're learning to yourself. To influence others on that, you have to make it about them. But it's their choice, as it always is, as to whether or not they're ready to really delve in or take that hard look with it. But the essence of it and what it is, very early on, one of the very first choices, have the choice to make is, are we going to remain a victim to what happened? Or are we going to choose to be victor and take charge of our life? A huge step, a monumental step that defines, to me and my experience and the countless others that I've spoke to on this, is when they really are ready. Is they are ready to let go of what was and really assume a take charge mentality, and then realize that it was now up to them. They were an adult. It's up to them now to really dictate who and what they really want to be. Frankly, it's easy being a victim. It's easy to blame everybody else. It's
Right.
tough to take charge of your life because now you've got to own it. Now you've got to take what's become this four-letter word, which is responsibility. It's spoken as like four-letter word. Everybody wants to avoid it. Hey,
Yeah.
let's sue somebody else of this rather than assume
Mm-hmm.
responsibility for our actions. And that's one of the great benefits of why personal growth is so powerful, just because at the end, one of the characteristics is people are starting to take more charge of their behaviors and of their life.
You bring up a really good point about responsibility. It is our responsibility to look in within ourselves, but also I think one of the key words that I think is also important about this particular part of your story and anyone's personal growth journey is accountability. Like, you're not only holding yourself accountable for what you've been through, what you can change, what you will be doing. There's a part in the book, I want to read this part. We are scared to admit our problems, showing feelings as a sign of weakness. And I wrote that down because I think that was a self-limiting thought that you had growing up, or even maybe now, I don't know. But it's definitely something that I think now in the media there is a lot more talk about mental health, and I think it'll eventually be okay to share feelings. Can you talk a little bit about ways that you've shown your feelings? I guess have you done it in talks, or have you done it in a sense where maybe other people could relate to these days?
Well said. And I like to go back to what you said is my definition of accountability is to walk your talk, right? It's so easy to say anything, say the right words, label yourself, use words, authenticity, transparency, but not walk that way. And that's really what accountability is. And it is tough to be able to share emotions. I mean, again, think of it psychologically. Growing up is cut crying. Don't be a sissy, right? Particularly to the boys. Stop there. You're being a sissy. You're being a girl, kind of thing. And that was so much of what was learned. So right early on, it goes back to that formative years where we learn how to hold these things in. It's not good. It's wrong. I've got to stand up. I've got to put that facade on. As I started with the counseling, I realized that I had to first learn to really get in touch with my feelings. I had lost that, like so many people do, from our past, bad experiences that we've had, traumatic experiences, abuse, etc. We shut down our feelings. So a lot of the growth up front from a personal growth perspective, that's that first sector, as I talked about, of growth, is really, that self-esteem, but also it's getting in touch with our feelings. And so for me, I had a huge amount of anger built up as a result of the abuse I experienced. But I kept that all inside, and that just raised havoc with my body. And now looking back, so many of the physical ailments and problems I had, ulcers and other things, were characteristic of that anger being held inside. And so it was in workshops, one in particular, that was a very intensive workshop that allowed me and prompted me, gave me a safe framework to really go in there and start getting in touch with that anger. And that allowed me to realize it's okay, to have that. We all do, to get it out, learn how to get it out, which was an equal part of the learning. And then be able to then release some of that real pin-up energy that's hanging in there. And we know angry people, right? We see them every day. And that's that characteristic of it is they're holding on to these things that happened that they've never released. Part of the question was, is out in talks and things like that. Absolutely. I wear my emotions now on my sleeves, and it's characteristic. Yesterday, bringing my dog to the vet, realized, oh my God, he has cancer. And right now, I within seconds could be in tears because it's so sad. It's so sad to be losing, such a close and a loved one, right? And yet, that's a part of us that when we are in touch with, it allows us to be ourselves. Truly being ourselves is being able to be human. And in there is this whole range of feelings. If you want to be passionate, if you want to experience joy, then guess what? You've also got to learn to be in touch with the other negative feelings, the sadness, the anger. That's the real benefit I experience, is by learning to do that, becoming that. Now, frankly, it's near impossible for me to hold back my emotions because I've learned and developed a new belief that it's okay. And in experiencing it and expressing it, frankly, I feel better as a person. I move past some of the negative feelings and can greater experience the joy that I have rather than letting the fears and other things that so much consume my life hold me back from feeling the passion and joy when I experience it in life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I'm almost speechless because I feel like everything you said, from like, if you want to experience happiness and joy, you have to be able to experience the other side. So, as a reader, my perspective from reading this is, no, I didn't have the same experience as you, but I did have the same. I empathized with you because I felt like I have been in that endless loop of seeking acceptance. What really helped me see that we all have our endless loops, of, you know, whether it's acceptance from coworkers or others in the industry or whatever, and we realize that a lot of us have the similar characteristics of, seeking happiness and joy. And so it doesn't necessarily need to relate to your story, which is, revolves around your father and alcoholism and stuff like that. But we carry on a lot of stuff from our parents, from our grandparents, from, it could be tons of things that's happened way back that were never dealt with. I think it's important for me as a reader to share that with you and anyone who might be listening, because you don't necessarily have to be having the same experience that you did in order to identify it with a book like this.
Oh, it's one of my dreams is
Mm-hmm.
to develop a site of which people who move through these processes have a chance to really share their life story,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because everybody's story is unique, different. The causes may be different, as you said, in terms of the past, but the effects can be the same. And that's the part that share my story is hey, you could have totally different things, but you can feel and relate to the effects. And
Mm-hmm.
what you talked about is that, as I did, we each have these repeating patterns
Mm-hmm.
in life, and they come from unhealthy beliefs we formed, sometimes back from our formative years. Any
Right.
point in our life, we can form them. But the great news is that we can change those. But we've got to first make that link to that negative consequences that, like for me, I was having in relationships, and
Mm-hmm.
they were difficult. The cause of it was I was desperately in my life seeking approval that I never got from my parents. I'd never had that, and as kids, children, we need, it's a basic need, and so if we don't have that need fulfilled, we keep
Mm-hmm.
trying to get it, right? And we'll
Right.
go out there and we'll find others, cults, groups, gangs, whatever, to be able to get that acceptance. Well, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I kept trying to seek it in a relationship. Well, imagine if, you can just imagine the outcome. If I'm constantly seeking your acceptance, it'll never be enough for me
Mm-hmm.
in that. It's going to grow old for the partner, right?
Right.
And my significant other. And as a result of that, it's going to wear and tear, as it did on the relationship, and along with some of the other issues, lead to the breakup. Well, that's the thing, was these are these recurring patterns that we have, that as we learn about ourselves and we go back to understand the cause and the effect. And the effect is that unhealthy belief we formed about ourselves that we're still repeating, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's buried in our conscious. We don't even see it, and we keep doing it, and that's what prompts the victim. Because as for me, it was saying, women. Right, what's the
Yeah.
saying there? You can't live with them, you can't live without them, right? It was to
Mm-hmm.
justify that part of me that said, no, I have a problem.
Right.
I'm being too needy. It leads to jealousy. It leads to other things in my relationship. Once I had that, once I acknowledged it, once I learned how to really step aside that, form healthier beliefs about me and relationships with it, then I could have much more healthier relationships in my life. So
Yeah.
that's the premise. It's all about understanding what happened and tying it back to those, particularly those negative consequences while experiencing life. And rather than blaming with others, taking that responsibility, that accountability word, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To say
Mm-hmm.
hey, it's now up to me, and I've got to begin by taking that hard look within.
My last question on this, I want to know is, does it ever end? In terms of, does your work ever end now that you're aware of your behaviors?
Great question. So, this for some people might scare them off because the
Mm-hmm.
answer is no.
Right.
And that's the challenge with self-awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that we hold ourselves in check. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have that part of us now that's over here, sort of checking what's my real intention here? What's my motivation here?
Right.
So continuing to keep that in front of us as we go through life in different circumstances is tough to do. It's a new lens to really looking in the mirror and seeing ourselves, seeing people, seeing life around us. But beyond that, for me was the quest to also go further. It wasn't enough just to heal my ills and negative issues and patterns. It then became a quest to really go beyond that. I label that in the framework I talk about. What we just talked about has really been personal growth. Then there's self-discovery, which is, what, now that I like me more so, who am I really? What's my potential? What's really
Right.
what I want to do? But then it didn't end there. It was, what? I want to understand more about life. Where do I fit in? I mean, gosh, we are here only a certain amount of time. We have these tough things and tough challenges that we don't really talk about. I wanted to understand the meaning of life, and that's the enlightenment phase that I pursue. It's a constant quest, but it's also a constant check and balance of keeping myself honest along the way. Because one of the things is, as much as I've made so many of the improvements in there, I'm still prone to acting like I did when I was 7 years old. But it's that self-awareness that really helps me to sort of keep myself in check and in line. So in that way, it never ends. And I'd say
Right.
the other part of it, personal growth can really evolve to what I call self-discovery and enlightenment, which could mean the journey could forever go on. How do we know that we're done growing? And the response of
Wow.
it is profoundly is when we've taken our last breath. It's still a quest. There's
Mm-hmm.
more to learn. There's more out there. And I utilize this as an example is here we are faced with the pandemic, really tough times. And it's easy to get down, depressed, totally get it and understand it. And I've been there myself. But yet my quest has brought this new self-awareness that says there's reasons. What is the reason, for example, of it? I truly believe that this is a wake-up call to humanity. And this is a chance for us to really understand some of the ways that aren't working anymore, for us a chance to really evolve as humanity and get past some of the real behaviors that are leading to some real tough things, whether it's climate change, politics, wars, economy, Black Lives Matter, all of these elements that don't belong, requires a great degree of self-awareness. Well,
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, those things don't come easy, and it very often comes from pain, right? No pain, no gain.
Right.
Pain is
Right.
so often that stimulus, as it was for me. So before I even made that choice, was that pain of which was becoming too much, which is I was prone, as my brother did, to go and walk off that bridge, and that was a very tough point in my life, but there was that point, but it was that pain that really acted to be either as an end or as a stimulus to grow. And I think that's really what we're in. But that's an example of how I continue to sort of see life today, politics and leaders. It's why I wrote the new ebook on leadership, because I really want to help to influence a movement towards really more self-aware leaders. But what does it look like unique to the role of leaders in companies today? Which is why I devoted some time and effort to that. So that's why, to answer your question, is no, it doesn't end.
Doesn't stop. Yeah.
It doesn't stop, but
Nope.
you're the one driving yourself. You can
Right.
choose to stop it, but there's
Right.
no returning once you get it. There's no return once you see it. There's only
Mm-hmm.
now a quest to want more.
Right. Exactly. And you put it so well. I want to dive into the tools for self discovery, some that you cover in your book, and obviously maybe talk about some of our experiences with those tools. I know I've done some of them, and I'm sure you have done all of them in that list. So we'll definitely go over that in the next video. But if someone wants to go ahead and get your book right now, where can they go find that?
Great. Same place for all of the information for resources, other things I provide. My website, there it is, growhumanpotential.com. Links to the book. It's available on Amazon, all your online bookstores. In there, it'd be deeply an honor, privilege for you to read it. But also on there is a whole host of other resources as well to take advantage of, to start considering more about this journey of personal growth and self-discovery. Hi there. Thanks for viewing the video. Be sure to check out my website, www.growhumanpotential.com, for a lot more information on the topics of personal growth and self-discovery. There you'll find information on my book on personal growth, self-discovery, ebook on leadership, coaching, which I provide both career coaching and life coaching, access to my blog, etc. Most importantly, I hope to have provided you with some information to help you on your journey to discover you. Have a great day. Thank you.